Welcome to Beyond the O.R with Dr. Kevin Brenner. I'm a board-certified plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. I want to take you beyond my world of plastic surgery, diving deep into exciting hot topics and delving even deeper into compelling characters that I've met along the way. We'll be talking with attorneys, actors, comedy writers, Navy SEALs, and many other fascinating and inspiring people with truly intriguing stories to share. So let's jump right in. Welcome back to Beyond the O.R. Today we have two amazing guests, two very unassuming and very impressive individuals who have devoted their lives to helping special forces and veterans reintegrate back into society. Today we have Kevin and Shannon Stacy. Welcome, Kevin and Shannon. It is so nice to see you guys. So Kevin is true hero and founder of Station Foundation, which we're going to learn all about. That's what today's show is about Station Foundation. He's a combat leader dedicated to helping special operations community reconnect with life after war. Nothing short of remarkable. And his beautiful wife, Shannon, also a true advocate for military families and has background in speech language pathology, and now as co-founder and director of Station Foundation, also helping out our veterans. Welcome, guys. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
I gotta say, Kevin, as good as you look, Shannon, you are like glowing. I really mean that. You look like a new human being.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel that way too.
So,
I just was told that by a couple people the other day as well.
It's rosy.
I'm not even. I mean, even from the last time that you and I talked, because it was a video chat, which was what, a month or so ago.
About a month ago, I feel like
legitimately look like a different human being. Kevin, are you with me on this?
Yeah, it's. I know we'll talk about Station, but what you did for our family and for our lives is literally life-changing. And from a physical standpoint, you can see it with Shannon on Zoom right now, but it's
remarkable. It really is.
Yeah, and it's enveloped like our whole lives in a good way, you know? So before...
I'm so happy to hear that. And so just to give you a little bit of background, to give our viewers and listeners a little bit of background, and actually, I'd probably rather have you guys tell the story, or Shannon, you tell the story about how we met, but the short of it is Shannon was suffering from breast implant illness, and the short story, as was Elizabeth. That's how I met Elizabeth initially. Also my patient way back when. Now she barely answers my phone calls, and
now I work for him.
Yeah, hardly. But we explanted you, and I mean I say this a lot about some of my patients. The change is amazing. So maybe I'd rather have you tell the story because you tell it so much better.
hopefully. So in 2014, I had a bilateral mastectomy, and during the reconstruction in the beginning of about January 2015, I had implants put in for the reconstruction. So, that was quite some time ago. And I don't know how long I was having symptoms that were making it challenging for me to function at the level that I'm actually capable of functioning. Just fatigue and brain fog. It really came to a head October of 2022. I actually ended up in the ER because we didn't know what was going on. I had no energy left to me. And when he gets scared, when Kevin says you need to go to the ER, that's when you know it's like, oh, what I'm feeling is actually being seen by people now. We couldn't figure it out. We did all kinds of testing. My heart was fine. Looked at my brain was fine. Everything was getting tested, and there was no result coming back, which was good.
But you weren't fine, right?
No. I couldn't function. I ended up in bed for 2 months prior to the surgery. I couldn't keep my eyelids open. They were so heavy. I couldn't make decisions. I couldn't actually sit down and do work. I knew what I needed to do, but I couldn't function and actually execute. Shortness of breath, heart palpitations, really physically, I could not do much. Walking up steps was enough for me to be short of breath. And I just knew it wasn't getting better. So in March of 23, I say I self-prescribed bed rest. I was in bed for 2 months. The only thing I could work from my bed. And I could also just keep the energy to get my kids to where they needed to be in the evenings. And then we were informed of BII back in November of 22, and we wanted to complete all the testing to make sure we could rule out if it was my heart, if it was any cognitive issue, whatever it could be. And there were no results coming back as positive. So I knew I was going to get an explant regardless. And so once my heart was cleared, we did consultations. One was not so good. I guess this person didn't believe in breast implant illness. And then Kevin's friend.
People do.
Yeah, it was the worst experience ever. I was in the parking lot like bawling. It takes a lot for me to cry as much as I did. And I felt hopeless is what I kept saying to Kevin. I said, I feel hopeless. This was supposed to be a good moment. I was getting it on the calendar. I was going to get the surgery. Things are going to get better. And I walked away feeling like, oh my God, am I crazy? Am I really this crazy? Because that's what you start to feel too.
Well, yeah, you feel
function.
like I can relate to you, Shannon. I couldn't function either. I had acute pancreatitis. I was in and out of the hospital. They just kept saying I had an autoimmune disease, but they could never figure out what autoimmune disease. And then you start telling doctors, well, could it be a BII? And they're all looking at you like you're crazy, until I found Dr. Brenner, and I'm like, can it be BII? And he knows, because when I went in there, I was gray. My color, I had no color. My husband started worrying. I would get these dizzy spells, and Dr. Brenner, once he did the explant, is like, you're a different human being. And so I think it's so interesting that these doctors refuse to believe it, because it's women on the forefront on social media talking about it. Yeah. And they just don't want to acknowledge it. And then we have doctors like Dr. Brenner that really kind of, when you go in there, you're like, oh my God, okay, I'm not crazy. It's a validation that is unexplainable when you're going through it.
Yeah. My doctors out here, and like my primary care physician and my cardiologist, they were not familiar with it at all. And they were being very cautious in regards to like making sure I asked as many questions as I should to make sure I was being safe if I was getting surgery done, because they didn't know anything about it.
Right.
The consultation I did was in another state. And the doctor was a plastic surgeon, and he just, I don't think, believed in it at all. And was just kind of almost pushing me out the door, but saying, we'll do the surgery if you want. We don't know what it's going to happen. So then it was, you do feel crazy because nobody can figure it out. And then I was almost diagnosed with just chronic fatigue syndrome, which means you're just going to be tired for the rest of your life.
Right.
And you can't live like that, especially not when you have 2 young kids and you got a lot of evening activities you got to take them to and travel for. So it was debilitating, to say the least. And I was just so lucky that when I got one of my CAT scans done, because they tested my whole body, which I was kind of grateful for, that my doctors were so open to do so much testing to rule everything out. But one of the during a CAT scan, the tech asked me how long I had my implants for. She said, this is kind of something I'm hearing about, but there's this thing called breast implant illness. And once people get their implants out, they change significantly. And I'm just like, as soon as I heard that in November, I was going to get it done regardless of it being the main issue or not, just because I didn't want to have to deal with something like that down the road. So then Kevin's friend Matt connected us to Dr. Brenner through another connection. And we finally got to meet Dr. Brenner. By the time I met Dr. Brenner, I literally couldn't keep my head up. I was holding phone calls with my head on the table. Yeah. Like I put people on mute because I could still I could still understand and I could still respond. It was just so much energy for my brain to make all those connections and actually complete it and have energy left. So I would just like put people on speaker, mute them. I'd have my head lying on the table, and then I'd like be able to unmute, pick myself up, talk, and then do it again because I couldn't sit upright. It felt better to be hunched over because it didn't take as much energy.
Just looking at you, like, I mean, I can show you pictures later, but like, and Kevin knows this. She just looked like, I don't know, gaunt. Like maybe is a good word for it. Like your eyes looked like sunken, and your face was skinnier, and
the color.
You just didn't look well.
Yeah,
right?
And I looked catatonic at times too.
Yeah.
I just had nothing in me. I could hear everybody, I could understand everybody, but there was no affect to my face. It was just, I didn't have any energy to devote to anything else other than survival, pretty much. That's where I was in.
Yeah, my skin changed colors the day after surgery. I was gray, and I actually had before and after. Gray, had the surgery, had burning in my feet. The day after the surgery, the burning was gone, and my cheeks were pink. I hadn't had, I was like gray. So you look fantastic, fantastic.
And then also,
congratulations.
And
Thank you.
on top of that, and Shannon sort of hit on it. So we met through Matt Wellborn, and you can explain who Matt is, through Dr. Rob Bray, who it has involved me, and I've gotten involved in Valor for Life, which is a separate foundation which raises money for medical care, surgical care primarily, for our special ops veterans.
Okay.
And so we were, fortunately for you guys and for me, we were able to meet that way, and we were able to take care of Shannon through the foundation.
Oh my God, it's
So
amazing.
So that was a win-win for all of us,
Oh my God.
right?
Yes.
Oh gosh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. That's the hardest part when you find out about BII, is the challenges that come with it financially as well. So we are really grateful that Dr. Bray was able to connect us with you and you were able to get involved with the foundation. So thank you.
It was awesome. So she's our first patient through Valor for Life, and this is an evolving story. I've already gotten, like, we posted your video, our interview videos about you and Valor for Life on Instagram, and like I'm getting like all these like people coming out of the woodwork. What is this? How do we get involved? And so I'm trying to explain it, but it's not even actually set up yet for plastic surgery, because the most of the patients, as you guys know, who have been treated through Valor for Life are like SEALs and Delta Force, and so people who've had spine and vertebral column injuries and things like that, and chronic pain management. So it's really been spine surgery, and you're actually patient number one in the plastic surgery arm of Valor. So congratulations.
This is awesome.
Okay.
And
it seriously was life changing. So that's good.
So then maybe you guys can tell us your connection to Matt Wellborn, who he is, and Kevin, how you guys are friends / colleagues.
Yeah, it seems that Matt follows me everywhere I go. Because this is recorded, he can hear that.
It's a little awkward.
Yeah, but actually, so by trade, I was a helicopter pilot in the Army. Right. And for the first couple of years, I flew a reconnaissance scout platform called the Kiowa Warrior. And I showed up to Iraq, 2003. I looked like I was, 12 years old, coming into
you still
combat.
Look like you're 12 years old.
I know. I was going to say that.
I cleaned up a little bit, but thank you. I don't know if that's a compliment or, but Matt was the first guy that I flew with. So he trained me up for tactical flying. And then almost for the rest of our careers, we served in the same units and flew a lot together, particularly in the cavalry. And Matt and I are best of friends. Our kids are cousins, and we're uncles to each other, and very, very tight. And Matt also separately has a very robust and distinguished network of people, and Dr. Bray happens to be in there. And Dr. Bray has helped so many people quietly with spinal surgeries. A lot of the guys I flew with, a lot of the guys that I flew, into combat, and he's been doing this just real quietly.
Yep.
And when Shannon was going through all of this on the family side of things, from October onward, it was like a low level panic attack like every day, because we didn't know. And of course, you start with the big things, right? And those take a while to rule out. And for a long time, we were looking at what life would be like had those things been the diagnoses. And so as we're going on, we're bouncing from different people. And like Shannon said, like the hopelessness, I just reached out to Matt and I was like, hey, man, like we keep hitting these walls. I need help. And Matt right away was like, I'm on it. And that's how we ended up meeting and connecting. And I'll tell you, like, from our vantage point, from my perspective and my kids' perspective, like, you gave us Shannon back. For a long time, it was like something's off. And then it just, man, it hit like this crescendo.
Right.
And it wasn't getting better. And then surgery, rehab, coming out of it, like, I can confidently say that your work and your surgery and your care gave me my wife back and gave her life back. And now it's like, it's funny. It was so bad for a long time. We were just in this funk. And as we were coming out of it, I remember there was a day we were in the kitchen, and I typically like poke and, rib people and joke around. And I said something to Shannon and it came back at me. So she like fired back. Right. And I was like, oh, we're back.
She's back.
Yes. Yeah, so it's like, it was amazing. And then even just yesterday, we were all at work and we're sitting up in the office and we're going through stuff, programming and everything. And there's just like, she brings this warmth and light into everywhere she goes, that it was back. And I could feel it. And it's something that we're learning to grow back into. Like, it's weird, right? Like, you would think once the health comes back, you would like just snap right in and charge forward. But it takes a little bit of time to, reacclimate and get accustomed and to understand where your body's at each day and growing back into this like healthy space. And I tell you, like, your work, and I know like we'll connect all the dots, but like there was a limit that we could do for other people. And Shannon's surgery has reopened kind of that limit to where we can get back into, at the depth we were doing before, the healing and the work that we do with the community in the special operations community.
Just in terms of the breadth of the number of people that you can take care of, right? Because we'll get into that, because I want you to explain it from your perspective. Like sort of like the weekend retreats or week-long retreats that you guys do. Yeah. Right? You can only you guys are basically running the show, two of you, right? I mean, I know you have other people. I know you have other people, and you got a board of directors, and they're all special forces connected and all that stuff. But you guys are the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, we have a great team. We have people that complement our work. But for the past 11 years or so, Shannon and I have been like the core facilitators of that work. And now we 10 years, 11 years into it, we have great teammates across the country that come in and make our work even better. But at the core of it, it's been Shannon and I. From bouncing babies on our lap to working with couples to cleaning dishes in the kitchen, the whole spectrum of work. And a lot of that's done way, way behind the scenes. And now, like, the energy, the capacity, and I think to what Shannon was talking about before, just the cognitive work, right? Like the depth that we have to go with people and the ideas that we have to kind of like create so that we can penetrate through some of the hardness that our community has and get into the heart work and the soul work of what we do. Now it's back on. I mean, in the most simplest way, like, Kev, you gave us and you gave these people a whole extended runway. So like,
That's awesome.
As much as you're in LA and doing your Beverly Hills thing, like your work is felt in Montana every day.
I feel like I should, like I said, I feel like I should be in Bozeman with you guys.
Well, I want to
next podcast.
So just to clarify for our listeners, Station Foundation. Tell us exactly what the Station Foundation is.
Sure. Yeah, so I would say the Station Foundation, other than being a nonprofit that supports the special operations community, is an experience that we offer for families in special operations to come home from war. And that's what we're really good at. We help those families that are continue to serve or have found, the end of their runway with service in uniform and have transitioned out. Regardless of where they are, we meet them on their journey and we help them come home from war. And we do that in a series of different ways. Our biggest kind of, ground zero is Montana. And that's where we offer these 9-day, really deep immersions that are experiential, that pull people out of their environments, disconnect them from the static and from, I think, the pressures of service in this community, and allow them the space and time to approach the things that are really important to them in their lives. Often that's their family, their relationships with their partners, their husbands or their wives. And the big thing is like, how do we take this community that does a majority of the work overseas combat wise and bring them back into our country and make them, successful and impactful in their own community, so that we can break away from these stereotypes around veterans that you're either this like, crazy guy who has a whole bunch of guns in his garage, or like you're this like desperate, charity case, this like poor little puppy that needs to get brought in. Quite the contrary on our community. Like our community is rich with like very intelligent, hardworking, capable people. And that includes their spouses. Like that's not just the service member. Right. And so you have these incredibly powerful couples who have done a lot of work for our country. And most of that work has been overseas. And personally, I think like we're missing an incredible opportunity to reintegrate these families back into our regular community, right? Like it doesn't have to be at the state or national level. It's like who's coaching your kids' little league team, or who are the teachers that are involved in their lives, and how do we get these people back into the community so that they can lead from the front, and we can take 20 years of experience and benefit our country, not just on like the national security side, but on, I think, like the soulful side of healing from, 2 decades of nonstop war. So,
and this is really an issue. It's not just for Special Forces community. I mean, this is an issue for pretty much everyone who's served, in the military when they're trying to reintegrate back in. You just happen to be focused on that, on the special operations community, and I will say, it's a unique community, to say the least, right? I mean, I know you see movies and you hear stories of, veterans who are downtrodden. You hear unfortunate stories of suicide and things like that, and or just can't get a leg up once they come back,
or severe panic, which
is kind of where they come in, but truthfully, and maybe I'm a little jaded, but like everyone who I've met in the Special Forces community, you guys are a rare breed. I mean, it is a no-quit mentality that they went into the military with, that they stayed at the highest level, and then even when they come out, it's a no-quit mentality. I mean, we haven't really talked about it specifically, but every single person that I've met who's former Special Forces is now like killing it in their second career, whether that is as a TV producer, as a New York Times best-selling author, creator of a foundation. I mean, I just one after another. I mean, last season we had Joel Lampert on, who was a former SEAL. He had a TV show, and he's got his game coming out, and like you guys are just so tremendously motivated to make things work. And so it's interesting when you hear that there are a fraction of the special forces community who are having difficulty. And that's why Station Foundation is so important.
Yeah, it's funny when we were looking at this problem set, 11, 12 years ago, those were like the traditional responses that I'd get. Like, why special operations? Like, they're highly assessed, they're well trained. You hear all the poster, talking points about like resilient and tip of the spear and no quit. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely true of our community. We've also carried a tremendous amount of weight home from war. And no matter how resilient and trained you are to some of these things, you go over and you do, a lot of the guys we're working with 15, 20 deployments. And these aren't deployments where they're checking IDs at the gate.
Right.
Right.
You had 12
and nothing,
deployments, right, Kevin? 12?
Yeah, I did. Yep. And I'm an average guy, right? Like, I'm a low hanging fruit kind of guy. You talk to the guys that I fly with, and when they come out here, literally can't remember how many deployments they've been on. Like, it's that amount.
Wow.
They have spent the last 20 years in combat. And so what does that do? That, like, over time, without intention, creates this like neglect in your home and neglect in your personal life and this separation from the things that really make us human. And we learn at a very kind of early age in this community to push that stuff down, compartmentalize it, put it in a place where it can't get out so that you can go and hit the target. And when you lose friends or bad things happen on target, there's no time to process or to reconcile those things. It's, dust off, get back up, because you got another like 45, 50 days of combat before you go home.
And your life
and the other
depends
thing
on it.
Oh, yeah. So the things that kept me alive overseas and kept my friends alive, when you come home and you try and be a husband and a father, don't serve you. As a matter of fact, they prevent you from accessing humanity in a lot of times. And I think that's the most important thing about our community is our humanity. So you'll hear the phrase or the motto from the ground guys is like, we get paid for the shots we don't take. And so what does that mean? It's like you're expected to be able to, in nanoseconds, in the shortest amount of time, move through a target and process something that's happening in complete chaos and understand whether or not that's a good person or a bad person.
Right.
And sometimes the bad people look a lot like good people, and they do that intentionally. And so now you've got guys that are going nonstop and hitting these targets and having to be able to process at that speed. And it accumulates and it accumulates and it accumulates. And we do a really, really good job of going to war. Like, our country's great at it. I mean, we finish one, we're off to the next one. We do a really bad job of coming home. Really bad job.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
I have a family member that was in the military, and he was deployed tons and tons of times, and now he suffers from severe panic and anxiety attacks. And we're constantly taking him to the hospital, and this caused this what you guys are doing, not only I'm sure is helping come back, but also families that really desperately want to be able to help and, be some kind of support, because you kind of don't know what to do, because I don't know what military life is. So this program is so important.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think it does, in order to reintegrate them back into our community, it requires the community to be engaged on a lot of different levels. But this isn't like a military problem as much as it's a national problem in terms of how we choose to go to war and what that means, and not just focusing on the front side of combat, but recognizing what this will do on the backside.
That's kind of why we started to do the work that we're doing. Was, these guys were expected to go overseas and then come back and pivot quickly to be a dad or a husband. And the reality is they had no time to process. So I feel like helping the folks in regards to being, I guess, more of what their norm was prior to being on those missions, was a big goal for establishing the station and helping prevent the matters that we were seeing come to the forefront.
And let's be honest, and I'll say it so that you don't get harangued for it. This is a shortfall of our government.
Oh yeah, I'm okay
100%.
saying that.
100%.
And Station Foundation and Valor are very similar in that capacity because, I've heard this from a friend of mine who was in the teams in DevGru, and he, the U.S. military will spend upwards of several $1 million to train every Navy SEAL. Each individual Navy SEAL, especially by the time they get up to like SEAL Team 6, it's like millions of dollars on training, or Delta Force, or the Rangers, millions of dollars to train them, and then when they're out, they completely wash their hands of them. The VA, I don't have to tell you, the VA medical system. I've worked in several VAs. The VA medical system is broken. It does not work. It does not serve our military at all in the capacity that they deserve it. And as is the case with Valor, these guys can't get proper medical care that they deserve. And I mean, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's absolute bullshit. I mean, my friend was on the helicopter that crashed in Abbottabad, and he came through. He almost got not only did he almost get killed in the crash, but was shot at in the compound. Came back, pain in his neck. It wasn't the VA at the time, but it was military hospital. It wouldn't even image his spine.
Oh my God.
Couldn't even get an MRI authorized. And he finally got to Dr. Bray, imaged him. He had like 3 compression fractures in his cervical spine, and ended up having surgery, like I think 3 or 4 different spine surgeries to correct it. And like, it's just, why is our government spending so much money? They're investing so much money for them to go, but to come back, it's
Because they make money to go
zero.
to war. That's why, because they make a lot of money when we go to war.
Yeah, and I think when you saw 2 years ago when we exited out of Afghanistan, I mean that was like the bottom falling out for a lot of people, because there was still this like small grasp of like, well, we did some good work, right? Like at the tactical or operational levels, we did some really, really important work, and then you see the collapse of 20 years in like 2 weeks. And then in your home and the country's forgotten about, I mean, they went to sleep. And I don't think it's a mistake, or I don't think it's a coincidence that when guys kill themselves in the parking lot of a VA, they're sending a message.
right.
And when they're sitting there with a stack of medical files and the VA is inept and incompetent to help them, we have to take a good look at that. And so part of our work, as much as it is to helping the families and those war fighters come home, I think it's also educating the country on the costs of war and being incredibly careful on how we beat the war drum and where that takes our country. Because like now it's going to be my kids, right? Like the next one is going to be my kids, and like I don't want my kids going through what my friends are going through right now. And I would love to be out of work, right? Like I'd love for someone to say, "Hey, Kev, it's over. We can
fishing.
we can turn the lights off." But it's not. And let's not pretend that we're not in other places in the world right now influencing actions internationally. And even more so, it's even quieter. It's in the shadows of what we typically do. So it's way more risky now. It's way more uncertain, and it's still going. So, for the last 15 years of combat, guys knew where they were pretty much going. They had an idea of some of that stuff, and now I'd say it's a bit more dynamic in that area, and that affects the families, right? So like I deployed on my son's first birthday, and everybody was at the house, and we were having birthday cake, and I'm at work receiving the briefing, and that stuff is happening way more, like 5-10x of what I experienced when I was in. And so that's, that stressor on the families. It just causes this drop in the ability to have stability and some predictability in their lives. And this is what we continue to ask of them. And so for me, like when Afghanistan closed down, people thought, okay, like everything's over. And for us, we're like, oh man, like it's just beginning. It's just starting to begin now, where guys feel comfortable to come to us and talk about that stuff. And we've been picking away at it for 10 years, right? Like our community is very insular. It's very skeptical of outsiders. It's very discreet and private. It keeps its door tightly closed, and it doesn't want the outside world to come in and fix its problems. And so for us, being born within the community and understanding the culture and the nuances, I think it helps us be able to access those families that are struggling, knowing that they're not going to come through and get their guns taken away or be grounded from flying or anything like that, that they're dealing with like a spiritual condition of going to war, and the things that they end up trying to like compensate with or kind of like put a Band-Aid on, like those are the things that we try to like remove and help them understand that, man, there's a whole life ahead of you, and it's beautiful, and the experiences that you've gone through can help form that beauty, as much as it's been painful or as much as it's been hard to process and navigate.
So you guys, Kevin and Shannon sent me a wonderful gift, and I actually, I know I have two of them. The other one's in my living room in a box still, because I haven't been able to deliver it on Target.
Yeah.
But so they gave me probably the best gift that I've ever received from a patient ever, and you haven't even seen it yet. But it's an American flag, and it's a very special American flag. Can you, as a sort of segue to explaining what you guys do on campus, can you just explain the framed American flag, and then B, explain the process so that our viewers and listeners can understand what you guys are doing at Camp Kevin and Shannon?
Sure. Yeah. So the American flag that we made for you is a large, I think it's like 3x2 flag that's made out of uniforms from service members in the special operations community that they wore in combat, and they bring home and they bring out to Montana to deconstruct and rebuild. And it's part of a larger curriculum around identity and service and the impacts of war, and how our uniform kind of captures and absorbs all that. And so when you think of military service, you often think of those combat uniforms, the fatigues that we wear overseas when we're on target. And a friend of mine who's also a veteran that worked with us integrated this idea of papermaking into our program. One, it's completely different. There's only a few people in the world doing it. And for us, it just like dives deep into this idea of identity and service. And it's a platform for us to go and explore, hey, when you put this uniform on, what does it mean? And what does your family see in it? And when you come home and you put it away, does that mean that you're putting your identity away? And when you transition out, you no longer have all this stuff on your uniform to demonstrate what you've done. And how does that impact you? For some people, it's like totally freeing, right? Like that they're not confined to these ribbons and schools and things that when you look at someone, you can tell like they've been places. Right. Other guys, it's terrifying. And other guys don't bring their uniforms out in front of their family. A lot of us don't wear our uniforms to work unless we're actually doing work. And we keep a really tight boundary around our work clothes and, our civilian clothes. And by taking these uniforms out and putting them in the center of a room and talking about them and talking about our experiences and how they shape and inform us, it allows us to reflect and understand, like, wow, I never even had the time to think about it or even really process what my identity is and how my military experiences are just cooked into it. And so one of the things I get to do with the guys is, when I have enough of the material, we make special flags, and these flags are much larger, and we get them framed, and we only make them on very, very, very special occasions. And so we made one for President Obama. He has one in his office, and we make it for people that are very, very close to us, who have shown up and who have made a difference in our lives. And I tell you, like, when we first had our phone call, Kev, when we were on, Zoom and we were going through this, for someone to take the time to care, like genuinely, authentically care about us, and to say, like, I've got you, to me, it was like a no-brainer. Like, this guy's getting a flag. And I try to keep it under wraps and everything.
I didn't know. I didn't know until it showed up. I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was like, I was getting your
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I was getting your address and everything and making sure it got delivered and all that. But like,
It was honestly, it's
awesome.
it's awesome. It's
What
such
an
an
honor.
honor. It's
Such
so
an
cool.
honor.
I can't wait for you to see
yeah.
I have a
And for-
question.
this.
Oh,
No.
go ahead,
Yeah.
Kevin.
No, I was just gonna say, like, what once just belonged to us in a very small, exclusive community, it now belongs to you, and we trust that you'll take care of it.
Of course
and
I
we know you will.
It's
And you'll take
actually,
care
I
of the guys that
actually
come after.
have someone coming to finally hang it. It's been sitting like propped up on my wall in my office since you guys sent it over. And so
Good, man.
it's going to be a prominent display on my
That's
office
awesome.
wall. So the next time you
Good.
guys come to LA, you'll see it there.
What an amazing
Awesome.
and beautiful gift. I mean,
It's-
honestly,
it's really cool.
now I know when you said it's the best gift you ever got.
It
I
really
really
is the
get
coolest
it.
thing ever.
So I have a question for both of you. Can you both share either a personal story or the moment that you realized the importance of creating the Station Foundation? Was there a pivotal moment for both of you where you're like, we have to do this, and come up with this idea?
Do you want me to jump on that first, or give you a minute, or do you have?
I mean, if you jump on it, then I'm silent for the rest of
Go.
the
Go. You can go first then.
All right, Kevin. Shannon, let's hear it.
Yeah.
I don't really think there was a moment where I knew that the station needed to exist. I remember a moment, and I share this a lot with the guys when I share my story with them, that I knew there needed to be a change in our home dynamic. So when the guys come out, I work with spouses and kids, but Kevin does programs for the service members, and I always do a discussion that's kind of brutally honest as to what it is like to be a spouse in service in the special operations community. And a lot of times the guys are hearing the same thing they hear at home, just from somebody else. So it kind of resonates a little bit more, or they can embrace it a little bit more. And I always share the story of our son. And he was maybe probably 2, maybe 3. And Kevin, we called it the revolving door. He was home gone. He was at the office late. He was training. He was overseas. We just never knew. And I just lived life without him. Basically, you just schedule your life without them. And then if they can join you, it's like, okay, good, you're here. But you're also trying to maintain the home front and keep it stable. And so raising the kids on your own, and, 3 strikes, you're out with discipline for me. So it was kind of like, okay, this is the 3rd time you're doing something, Colin. Like, you need to go to your room and settle down. And I heard a bang when he went in there, and I thought, oh man, what is he doing? Like, what is he throwing? What's going on? And he was actually banging his head against the wall.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So he was in trouble for doing something. And, Kevin not being there, he never knew if he was just not a good kid in general. And so he was just saying, like, I'm a good boy. It makes me emotional.
Right.
I'm a good boy.
He's
I want
internalizing.
daddy. But he just kept saying, I'm a good boy. I'm a good boy. Um,
Oh,
and that was because you see, like, he would see helicopters, and he knew Kevin flew helicopters. And every helicopter is daddy to those kids because they're so proud.
right.
And then he's not coming home. And so as a kid, we would say, daddy has to work. I don't even know how he has to go to another place, like far away. But to a kid, they don't, like 2 or 3, they don't understand geography. They don't
Right.
know Kevin's not back here flying again. So for him, it was like, daddy's overhead. I can see him, but he's not coming in my door. But Mr. Adam next door is going home in his uniform. And so now I'm in trouble by mom. Dad's not coming. Like, it's just this confusing piece
Right.
of, so I mean, I just like sat on his bed and I was like, something needs to change. This is very confusing for his brain. And you don't give kids enough credit that they can process information, and you don't understand how they're processing it differently than what you're trying to express. And so when I saw that my son was so confused, he thought he was like misbehaving and a bad kid, and that's why dad's not coming home. It was kind of like, okay, we really need to figure this out. And it was right around that. And then there's another funny story, but you don't like it. At the table, we were then sitting at the table one night. So we had just come back from vacation. Like I said, we live as if, he could be there, then that's awesome. If not, we need to plan our lives in general. So Colin and I would always go back east to see my family. We'd go to the shore and spend time with them around his birthday. And then, my brother-in-laws are all there, my sisters are there, their cousins, and Kevin would be there if he could. This year he couldn't, so he wasn't there. We came home, we're sitting at the table and having dinner, Colin and I. Kevin's still gone. And he points to Kevin's chair and he goes, "We should get a guy to sit there. Like, we should what about Uncle Bryle?" Mm-hmm. It was like, what is it? Like, to these kids, it's like dad's presence in and out. That's their norm. They don't know what it's like to have dad come home every night at a normal time, having dinner with them, being involved. Like, he didn't know what that looked like. And so I knew I was exhausted from the lifestyle. And then, I would have never prioritized myself as a need for change. But when I saw it impacting my kid, and I worked with kids and I had a huge heart for helping kids, I was just like, I can't neglect my own son's needs right now. And so that's where I knew a shift needed to happen. But he can tell you when he knew the station needed to happen, or the genesis of it.
I think like the 2 examples Shannon gave, like those were happening all the time at work. And, they would hit the radar and then they would drop off. And you're not reading about this stuff or seeing it on like Fox News or CNN. Like, we're very insular. And I started seeing all these guys going through like these really, really tough problems back home. And there was like really nothing that I felt safe or confident with that I would send guys to. And I wouldn't go to it. And so I was like, man, if I wouldn't go to it, like, why do I expect anybody else to go to it? And for me, it was kind of born out of some of that frustration in the beginning that like, hey, we gotta address this. And at the time, no one was really doing anything. So when you think back like 12 years ago, it wasn't a thing like it is today, where there's like thousands of, services that are out there now. And I looked at our community, I say like, no one can even get close to us. And if I can figure out a way to support our community and something that they'll buy into, then anybody will buy into it. Like that, they are the hardest group to crack, me being one of them. And the examples that Shannon gave are common. It's the new normal. So that abnormal that we live in just normalizes, and it just becomes normal. Why I still do this work is, honestly, it's like every different program, at the end of it, I see more needs to be done. And so whether Shannon's working with spouses, or we're working together with kids, or I'm working with the guys, I think there are some serious, deep challenges and problems in coming home from war that aren't solved overnight, that don't get relieved with just a pill. And it takes like this journey, both like physical and spiritual and emotional, to come home from war. And so now, like, what you see the challenge, but we've been really solution focused, right? So there's a lot of other people out there that, can hop on a podcast and talk about all the problems that we're going through. And for us, it's like, okay, we're going to spend like 15, 20% of our time, like making sure that we all understand the problems, but we don't have to take a lot of time to do that. Like everybody is feeling it. And so now it's like, all right, what we really need are solutions. What we really need is like creative, committed people to develop programs that help people process through this stuff and reconcile it, and don't continue to live with this like cyclical shame and guilt of being an absent dad. Like think about a community of warriors, right? Like the best in the world. And they are absent in their children's lives, not because they choose to or because they want to. It's because what we're asking them to do. And they can't come home and talk about it, nor do they really want to talk about it. Right. And so now they're like wrestling with this stuff inside. And what is our solution? We don't have any nationally or from the government. Here, go to the VA and wait 6 weeks to talk to a shrink.
To get
to
get a medication or something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and those medications kill guys.
So what can our listeners do? What can we do to support the cause? Like, what is the best way? Is it donations? Is there volunteerism? How can our viewers connect with Station Foundation to help the cause? Because obviously, not all of us, I mean, Elizabeth and I, we weren't in special forces. Like, how can we help? Are there things that people can volunteer to do to help you? I know you guys have your week-long retreats and stuff. Do you guys accept volunteers? Is it just you just need money to pay for the staff that you have? What is it exactly that we can do to help facilitate?
Yeah, and thank you for asking. I think there's like two big areas, if people are listening, like where they can kind of like make impact. If you're talking specifically about the station, both volunteering and financial capacity are huge impacts. The things that we do, they cost money. And to hire and train and have world-class facilitators takes money. To bring program after program after program through here and to expand our programming nationally, it does. It takes committed donors and supporters to make that happen. And people come in at all different levels. And so one, absolutely, like from a financial standpoint, we don't go out and like rake money out of people and run away. Like we're very targeted and we're very committed to having like those authentic supporters come in and support. And if financially is unavailable, I think we all have gifts, right? I think there's people who have gifts to make a difference in people's lives. And it's as simple as just shooting me an email through our website and connecting and having a conversation. And I typically find people with good hearts that have a gift fit in really well with us. That's us. I think nationally, those conversations continue. We still need to have those conversations. We still need these opportunities for people to sit back and listen and to reflect. And I think it's as simple as just in your own community, finding ways to impact those families, whether you're close to a military installation or whether somebody moved in next door and they served and they're kind of weird, right? Like they're probably not going to go out and introduce themselves to you. And it's like, so how do we make our military community feel like they belong?
Well, and I also think the station's very family focused. That differentiates us from a lot of other organizations. And I think the awareness of the spouse's impact in the military and their role is so important because people don't understand how much the military spouse does. We were practically running a small business when he was in command. I was doing a lot of work to oversee all of the families, putting together events, disseminating information, notifying people when there were things going on. I had to update rosters. The reason I had to update rosters and have contact information was in case something went wrong and I had to notify somebody, right? So like these spouses aren't just at home making dinner and taking care of kids. They're also carrying the weight and the uncertainty. And a lot of them don't even realize the burden that they're carrying of like, is my husband coming home? Like that morbidity that sits with them all the time and nobody knows it. Like the country doesn't think about that. They think about the service member and how much they're going through. That comes home. everything that they're going through comes home. And there's like a secondary impact on the spouses that then impacts the kids because mom doesn't know how to manage the stress. And it just becomes a vicious cycle within the military world with the coming and going. And so I think if people are aware as well that military spouses need your help, they're not going to ask for it. Definitely, especially not in SOF. In special operations, the spouses are going to grind it and they're going to push through because they're just as tough as their husband. They're not going to let anybody see any cracks, right? But for you to extend yourself and just do something. What'd you say?
So you're probably tougher.
I think they might be more like, I feel that they step back a lot. So there's this, they call these guys the quiet professionals, but I always say these women are quiet professionals and they live in the shadow of the shadow because they step back from their world. They have careers and they step back from it because they know that in order for our nation to be safe, their husband has to go do a mission. In order for their husband to be sane and focused and on target properly, they need to have a house that's stable. They need their husband to know everything's under control. Like bills are paid, lawn's taken care of, kids are going to school, everything is good back here. You go do your thing and come back and we're not going to miss a beat here. Right. And so I think that's the difference, but they're both very strong, tough personalities.
Well, I really appreciate Shannon and Kevin, the vulnerability. You gave me just that story of that pivotal moment that you knew something needed to be done. I never thought of the impact that it could have on kids because kids internalize everything. Everything is their fault. They have no idea. So you gave me and me and probably a lot of listeners a perspective on the family life that we don't really like. We say, oh yeah, the families are affected, but you like that story that you being vulnerable, Kevin, Shannon, and telling that story really kind of puts things in perspective. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. And thank you for everything you're doing. Two very quick questions and quick responses requested.
Yeah.
Number one is I always ask, because we're over time.
Yeah.
But I always ask everybody, had you not gone into your career of choice, like what do you think you would have done? So what would that be for each of you?
I would still be serving in some capacity. That's been my space in general. I mean, serving families when I was a speech pathologist was important in helping people. I would be in a space that's helping people for sure.
I'd teach. Yeah,
Really?
maybe in some New England college teaching philosophy.
Philosophy.
That's my son's.
So-
That's what he's majoring in.
That was my major at school.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
yeah.
All right, cool. I like that.
All right, great. So really quick, tell us.
Tell us how everyone can get a hold of you guys. If they want to
Yeah.
donate, if they want to volunteer, if they want to support you in some other capacity.
Sure. You can find us. Yeah, you can find us at thestationfoundation.org, and we're on social media as well. Very little, but we're on there.
What's the Instagram handle?
I think it's Station Foundation NDN FNDN at the end, and I can send these to you as well if you post them. But
Station FNDN.
We'll put them up on the screen.
Yeah, they can reach out, and our number's online. It's on our website, and that's a email or phone direct to us. And if someone's interested in supporting or presenting their gifts to the people that we work with, like I'd love to hear from you. And I appreciate you guys giving us the space to share what we do and who we are and how that's impacted us on our journey. So thanks, guys.
We appreciate you both. We appreciate what all of our veterans do, but to hear the stories individually always has an impact on me. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you both. I'm so happy to see you guys. And if I don't see you, because if you don't come back to LA, I'll have to come visit you in Bozeman.
That's a fair trade.
Doing this in LA. That's what I said. I didn't get to go to the beach when I was out there recovering. I was like, we're going to do the podcast in LA, so I can go to the beach.
Well, it's kind of. I was actually supposed to go to the beach today after this, but it's raining.
It's
out.
raining, so
We've had more rain here than I think you guys had up in Montana this year.
Yeah, you guys got hit.
Pretty
all right,
good.
you guys.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thanks
thank
for
you.
your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you. Thank you so
soon.
much.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the O.R. with Dr. Brenner. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kevin Brenner MD and KevinBrennerMD.com.